It really looks like 2025 could be a mind-blowing year for big name and AAA games, especially in February. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through all of the major games we know about right now, and the ones that you'll definitely want to keep an eye on. We'll be starting with games that have the exact release dates locked in, followed by games that we know are coming out in 2025 in general terms, and there's so many games coming out, I had to cut it off at some point to prevent this video from being like 7 hours long, so we're going to focus on the top 20 games. Let's jump right into it. We kick off our list with Civilization 7 dropping on February 11th for consoles and PC. And Civilization is more or less the ultimate 4X strategy franchise in terms of scale and popularity, and this new entry promises to shake things up quite a bit. Now the core gameplay loop, it's basically the same, right? You're still taking turns and progressing your civilization from its first stages to the peak of technology and society, but one big change is that you're no longer confined to matching specific leaders with the corresponding civilization. That's right, that means you can go absolutely crazy with all sorts of fantasy combinations as you grow your empire, your civilization, but that's not the only change. Civ 7 is not going to have any worker units, cities will have to start out as towns first, you can finally navigate rivers, you no longer deal with barbarians but with many factions, there's going to be crossplay, and honestly the list just goes on and on and on and on. This game looks like it's going to be a total blast if you're into the 4X or turn-based strategy genres, and it looks like it's really incorporating a lot of lessons that the 4X genre has learned over the past 5 or 6 years, and that's great to see. I'm really looking forward to Civilization 7. Now let's move on to Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, a 15th century open world RPG coming to consoles and PC on February 11th. That's right, same day as Civ 7. This is such a crazy month, you won't have enough time to play every game that comes out. Now it seems like Deliverance 2 is going to be an absolutely gargantuan, a monster RPG, and potentially one that's talked about for the next decade or however long to come. It's going to have an 80 to 100 hour story focused on the themes of revenge, romance, and love, and it's going to be filled with first-person medieval combat and a massive open world. I don't want to get into the business of overhyping games for no reason, but right now, everything about Deliverance 2 and the way that it's coming together suggests that we could have an absolute masterpiece on our hands. Of course, we'll see if it lives up to that hype and how it plays out, but right now it looks pretty dang amazing and I'm really looking forward to it. Next up, we have Assassin's Creed Shadows coming out on consoles and PC on February 14th. Yep, another February game, and yep, Assassin's Creed is finally heading to Japan, and to be honest, you probably heard a lot about this game, and hearing the online discourse about this game has been almost, if not more, exhausting than playing some of the more recent AC titles, and I hope this AC game can really bring out the best in the series. It looks like it's going to have cool features like dynamic weather, physics-based grappling hook, tweaks to stealth and combat that might make the fighting a little bit more strategic, but for me what will matter most in this game is the actual open world and mission design, as well as the story and characters. If that's not there, then I'm not necessarily along for the ride, because as we know, these AC games, they can be really long and sometimes tedious. I hope that Ubisoft can come out swinging with this one, because a really great AC game still hits like nothing else, and because Ghost of Tsushima was so excellent and now acts as an active point of comparison. Let's move on to another February release. So we've got Avowed dropping on the 18th for PC and Xbox consoles, and this is yet another big game dropping in Feb. We're not going to have time to play all of this, oh my goodness, but this is the latest fantasy RPG from Obsidian. They are the makers of some of your favorite RPGs, such as Fallout New Vegas. And at first glance, honestly, it looks like Avowed is a lot like a Bethesda formula RPG, but polished and upgraded, and I don't mean that in a bad way. It's not a bad formula. You'll explore large areas and unravel a big story while you swing your swords and cast your spells, and it's also going to have gunplay, and you won't be tied to specific character classes as you level up. One important thing to note here is that this game isn't one giant open world. It's smaller in scale and looks to emphasize the more personal nature of the narrative or the character dynamics. Oh, and by the way, Avowed is set in the Pillars of Eternity universe, so there's bound to be exciting links between the games there. We move on now to one of the games I'm personally most excited for. I'm talking about Like a Dragon, Pirate Yakuza in Hawaii. Try saying that 5 times fast. Now, this hilariously titled game drops on February 20th on PC and consoles, and it's the latest wacky adventure in the world of Yakuza following fan favorite character Goro Majima. If you don't know anything about these games, that's okay, you can check out my video on them on my channel, but here's the basic premise, right? Majima, who was previously a leader of a big underworld organization, has amnesia and thinks he's a pirate, so it's gonna be a big pirate-style adventure, but set in modern times. And with exciting third-person combat, batshit crazy quests and minigames that the series is known for, plus all of the pirate goodness you could want, this game is shaping up to be an absolute joy to play. I absolutely adore that the devs are doing something different and wacky with this series instead of just retreading the same ground over and over, and I really can't wait to play Pirate Yakuza. I just wish the name wasn't such a mouthful. Next up, we've got another February game. That's right, Monster Hunter Wilds is releasing on February 28th for consoles and PC, and this really looks to be Monster Hunter, but on steroids, and on steroids, and on steroids, and on more steroids. The core gameplay loop continues to be Monster Hunter. You basically go out in the world to hunt and track and take down massive monsters, and you keep doing that over and over and over. But Wilds is bringing in a slew of combat and quality of life upgrades, which promises to make the series way more exciting, way more fun to play, and way more accessible than ever before. You can also call NPCs now to help you on quests, which is great, but I gotta say, I'm a little bit worried about the performance of this game. Capcom have been upfront about how this game requires an ultra-powerful computer if you want great resolution and frame rate on high settings, and the open beta was absolutely punishing to run. Of course, we'll see how things go for full release. I'm really excited for Wilds, but hopefully it's not one of those situations where you have a really great game, but it's unplayable for many people because of its technical problems. And I hope it runs well on PC. I hope it runs well on consoles. I just hope it runs well in general because this game looks like so much fun. Okay, so now let's move on to games with no specific dates, starting with Death Stranding 2 on the beach coming to PS5 and presumably other platforms down the line. It's very rare to have actual exclusives these days. I love the first Death Stranding. It's a glorified delivery game with really cool asynchronous multiplayer features, and I can't wait to see what Hideo Kojima and his team do with the second one. The story of the first game was absolute nonsense, and yet it still hit really hard at times. And the story of 2 just seems like it's turning things up to 11. I mean, you're seeing what I'm seeing right now. I have no clue what I'm looking at here, but I can't wait to get my hands on it. It's bound to be something different. Now let's talk about Doom: The Dark Ages coming to PC and Xbox consoles, and I didn't know we needed an origin story for the Doom Slayer, but I'm all for it. The last 2 Doom games have been unbelievably good as you rip and tear through endless demons, and there's no reason to think that The Dark Ages will be any different. I can't believe that the most influential FPS of all time is still kicking around with new games, and not just new games, but amazing new games. And of course, we don't know much about Dark Ages right now, but what we have seen so far in tiny snippets looks awesome, and with the pedigree of id Software and the Doom franchise with, the last 2 games, there's no reason to believe that this one's not going to be a banger. Now let's move on to Gears of War E-Day, marking the return of the classic cover-based shooter to PC and Xbox consoles, and we don't know that much about it yet. But we do know it's a prequel. It's set 14 years before the first game, so naturally, we're going to be getting Marcus Phoenix back along with Dom Santiago, and I'm really interested to see how they flesh this all out. The original game's story was paper thin, so with the prequel, there's a lot of room that they can play around with. And I'm also really curious to see what ends up happening with the gameplay, because the prequel nature could end up limiting it in some ways. Maybe it will, maybe it will. I'm cautiously optimistic, and I'm looking forward to seeing a new Gears of War game. Anyway, let's switch gears now. Get it? Haha, comedy. Let's switch gears now to Ghost of Yotei coming to PlayStation 5. And this is a third-person action-adventure game set in 17th century Japan, following up on the massively successful Ghost of Tsushima. We don't know much about the story just yet, but what we do know is you'll be playing as Atsu and potentially seeking some kind of revenge. It'll be really interesting to see this game side by side with Assassin's Creed, see how they do things similarly or differently, and this marks the first time developer Sucker Punch is creating a game from the ground up for the PS5. The game already looks stunning with its amazing art direction, and I'm excited for us to learn more, and I'm already so exhausted by the online discourse, just like Assassin's Creed. It seems like anytime something hits Japan, like the theme of Japan or like historical Japan, people online sure have a lot of unnecessary opinions about it. But anyway, I'm excited about the game. I'm trying to tune out all of the noise. Can't wait to learn more about it and play it eventually. Alright, now obviously no list like this would be complete without GTA 6, right? Grand Theft Auto 6. This genre-defining open-world crime game is set for a 2025 release date, but Rockstar does tend to delay their games since announcing their initial release dates. But it's been so long since a new GTA though, so maybe this time the date is right from the get-go? I don't know, we'll see. I'm not really sure that I really need to say anything about this game. Let's be real, you're going to be playing it regardless. One thing to note though is that it's currently set for a PS5 and Xbox Series launch, so there's no mention of PC just yet. and it might be one of those situations where PC players have to wait even longer for the game to come out, like for their past games. Interestingly enough, we also have a new Mafia game coming out in 2025 for consoles and PC, and we're told it's going to have a gritty criminal story about the Sicilian underworld, and that it's going to be set in the 1900s. Now, which part of the 1900s? I don't know, but if they're saying 1900s, probably it means earlier, right? And really, that's almost everything we know about this game at the time of recording. I mean, it'll probably be a dramatic open world crime game, but how it plays and what its structure is going to be like remains a mystery for now. One thing that's really cool about it is that there will be Sicilian localization and kind of period appropriate voice acting, and I think that's really neat. Now we move on to Skate or Skate 4, and oh, I'm so excited for this one. Basically, the fourth Skate game looks like it's going to serve us the social multiplayer skating experience we've always wanted. Plus, it's going to be free to play, and the game is going to launch in early access first. We don't know how long it's going to take to get to 1.0, but the development videos over the years have me all giddy. It looks really promising. I just can't wait to skateboard around in a game with a bunch of friends. And by the way, there's also been plenty of rumors that Tony Hawk games might be coming back in 2025 as well. I mean, the man even teased something himself online. So us skating fans are going to be eating good in 2025, I hope. But let's move on now to Slay the Spire 2, coming to PC and almost certainly consoles eventually down the road. So this is the sequel to the game that basically wrote the Bible for the roguelike deck builder genre. So I have no clue how they're going to top that. I'm not envious of their position, and not that much is known about the game just yet, outside of it being more dynamic in structure, and that of course it's going to have new cards, new personalities, characters, mechanics, basically all of the usual stuff you'd want and expect from a sequel. And yeah, it's just crazy to me because Slay the Spire is just such a genre-defining game that spawned endless copycats and inspired so many other games. So I'm really looking forward to see what they do with the sequel, but I do kind of feel like a little bit of anxiety as well in terms of like, well, how can they possibly top the previous one? And if I'm feeling that just a little bit, who knows how they're feeling? Either way, I'm really looking forward to seeing more of Slay the Spire 2. Now let's move on to Borderlands 4. Just for a second, we don't really know anything about it other than that it's supposed to come out in 2025, but I feel like it's worth mentioning because Borderlands is so popular, it's somehow under the radar with how popular it is. Borderlands is huge and it's got a hugely rabid fan base, and RIP to everyone that had to sit through that Borderlands movie though. I'm so sorry you had to watch that. Next up, we have the reboot of the Fable series, an open world RPG set for PC and Xbox consoles, and we don't know much about this game except that we can expect swords, magic, and probably some kind of morality system that the series has been known for. The game is running on tech that powers the Forza racing games, and we know that there's a giant AAA-sized team working on it. The Fable games have always had an air of overpromise and underdeliver to them, despite being enjoyable. So what I'm really hoping with this new Fable is that it can finally deliver on some of the franchise's long-standing promises about, making choices that matter, about kind of approaching the games in a free-form kind of way, and just kind of living out your RPG fantasy. Next up, we have Subnautica 2 coming to PC in early access, and it's a sequel to a massively popular underwater survival game. Now, kind of like Slay the Spire, this is another one of those genre-defining games that's getting a sequel, and it's shaping up to deliver new worlds to explore, brand new gameplay mechanics, co-op of course, and a brand new building system. Again, it's one of those situations where I'm like, oh my gosh, how did they top what they did before? That's going to be tough, but I'm looking forward to it. And if it's anything like the first game, especially with the explosion of the genre now, you can expect to see some mighty impressive player count numbers when it does launch. Next up, we have Directive 8020, a sci-fi horror game technically set in the Dark Pictures anthology from the developers of Until Dawn. And while the Dark Pictures series has had its ups and downs, 8020 looks like it could be a strong return to form, maybe, with the incredibly talented Lashana Lynch playing the lead. We don't have that many details yet, but it's safe to assume that this will be another choose-your-own-adventure style or choices matter style horror game, with it being set in the Dark Pictures series. And it's going to be coming to PC, it's going to be coming to consoles. I'm definitely keeping a close eye on it. I really hope this is a strong return to form for this series, because Until Dawn just holds a special place in my heart, and despite any of the ups and downs in the Dark Pictures series, I enjoy playing it as well. Now let's move on to the final game of our list, one that was originally slated for 2024. That's right, I'm talking about Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater, and it promises to be a faithful remake of Metal Gear Solid 3, which is one of the greatest and one of the most cinematic stealth action games ever made. It's got so many incredible moments, my goodness. I really hope this turns out well, and it looks like they're upgrading the gameplay to be more contemporary while keeping the spirit of the original. The story looks like it's going to be untouched, which is great. That's what you want from something like this. And while we definitely get way too many video game remakes these days, it's nice to actually remake a game that could benefit from a remake. While the OG MGS3 is still one of the best games ever made, it's certainly dated in the way that it handles, and you as a contemporary player who might not have experienced the series back then will probably find it difficult to wrap your hands around the controls. It just doesn't play like how third-person games play like these days. So whether you're an MGS veteran or you're looking to jump into the series at kind of its origin story, this remake could be fantastic for you as long as they stick the landing. I will be praying to the video game gods that they do. There you have it, folks. That's 20 of the biggest games coming out in 2025. Again, there's so many more games coming out, but I had to kind of cut it off at some point so that we're not sitting here for 36 hours. But tell me, which of these games are you looking forward to the most? Or is there something not on this list that you're personally really excited for? Let me know in the comments below. I want to see your thoughts, and I'll see you next time. Thanks so much for watching. Cheers!